flip the House. Flip the House. Republicans are not going to do a single thing after this shooting we saw today.
So we invited Republican senators, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, why he's from Texas, because he talks about this issue a lot. We invited the governor to come on the show this morning. They declined. We say let's get after it. It's not a slogan. It's an approach. You have to take these issues on. You've got to ask the tough questions. You must be held accountable. Rubio says this is an inexplicable tragedy. That couldn't be less true. Governor Scott is actively fighting right now to penalize doctors who even ask patients in their state if they have firearms. Where are they? They won't come on here. They're on Fox News this morning. The mothership. They won't be pressed about gun control. What are they afraid of? Joining us now is former Republican Congressman David Jolly of Florida. Now, of course, the key word, my brother, is former, right? Because it gives you a freedom to discuss what is true. But still, you care about your party, and saying flip the House is not something to be flip about. Why are you calling for that?
Look, I've been in Republican politics for over 20 years and had an opportunity to work in the Congress as staff, serve as a member of Congress. And the reality after each shooting, if we are brutally honest, is Republicans are not going to do a single thing. And so if you're an American that this is the center of your political ideology, gun issues, then you need the Democratic Party to be in charge and to address reasonable and responsible gun control. Republicans will not do it. And Chris, I would also point out, though, because there is this thing about former members often speaking out. I tried to lead in the House on the terror watch list. I offered a compromise that had due process that Ted Deutsch was talking about. I was the only Republican to sponsor universal background checks. And you know what happened? Listen, I received NRA support in my very first race before I had cast a single vote. Once they started seeing my votes and once they saw the bills I introduced, they abandoned me. And much of my leadership did as well.
Well, look, the NRA matters. They put a lot of money in pockets. I mean, their numbers flying around now. I haven't checked them because I don't think it's relevant, because their impact is obvious. And whether it's $3 million to Rubio or $30 million or whatever to Trump, the money's just one part here. It's your voters. Exactly. People will come out, Jolly, and they will vote on their Second Amendment rights or their ill-conceived notions of what that freedom is about and why it's important to them in today's society. They don't come out on this issue and vote the same way. Do you think pressure from people is the answer to get your party to at least address the fundamental question of what can we do to stop the shootings?
You hit on two very important things. Look, the NRA is largely a beltway organization that controls the money, but they mobilize voters back home. And frankly, as a result of gerrymandering, you have these super red and super blue districts. And so there is a constituency that holds tightly to their firearms. And listen, that have explained to me, Republicans that I know and I trust and I love have said the reason the Second Amendment is there is so that we can keep firearms in case the government comes against us.
Right.
So those are the constituencies that you're wrestling with.
Right.
I don't think pressure will work on this. Republicans have had too many opportunities.
Well, I don't know. Look, I hope you're wrong, all right? I mean, because, look, let's be honest. If you can sell somebody on the contrived notion that they need an AR-15 to protect themselves from the government that has nuclear capabilities, you might as well use some good logic. If illogic can work, you might as well use good logic. But we've been making a mistake on our side as well. Allison and I believe that you shouldn't say the names of these shooters or terrorists when they attack, because there's just no reason to dignify them. But you know what the mistake we've been making is? We don't say by name the lawmakers of that particular state and what they have done or refused to do. So this morning, let's undo the mistake. Governor Scott, again, is actively fighting. Jolly, you tell me if you're wrong. You know the state of play in your own state. He is actively fighting to penalize doctors who ask their patients whether they have firearms in your state. This was a law under the ACA that they brought in. It was something that they didn't like in Florida. They got rid of it. It became a federal lawsuit. The law won. Scott is forcing an appeal of that. He wants to fight it. That's him. Rubio calls it an inexplicable tragedy. It is the most easily explained tragedy you can have. He knows why this happens. And then you have Ted Cruz. None would come on this morning. You would, but you're on the right side of this argument. They're all on Fox, the mothership. because they don't want to be asked about this. What are they afraid of? Tell me.
Because they're weak-kneed ideologues. You know what I hate in the Republican Party? It's people that say, I'm a hunter, I like to own guns, and I'm going to fight for the right to own guns, but they don't have the courage to stand in front of the American people and actually admit that they don't have solutions to these issues, and they are hiding from the American people on it. They are weak-kneed ideologues. Last year in the state of Florida, Republicans tried to pass open carry, not concealed carry, and guns on campuses. Students could walk into a classroom, lay their gun on their desk. Fortunately, that got killed. Those are the politics of the Republican Party right now. Chris, I'm a Republican, and I wish Republicans would address universal background checks, responsible gun control measures, but they're not doing it. And so it's not that I want Democrats for ideological reasons to take control of the House, but the reality is in the wake of these mass casualty firearm events, only the Democrats are speaking of reasonable gun control today. Republicans are hiding from the American.
You know, and again, it is a huge component of this discussion. I do not mean in any way to suggest otherwise. I know this. Nobody in this building's been to more of these shootings than I have, I would expect. But, you know, the question of how do we stop the school shootings has other components as well. I do not believe in villainizing the mentally ill. They are more likely statistically to be victims of gun violence than perpetrators of it. But you do have in these mass school shootings, well over 3 out of 4 wind up having a mental health component. So why not start there? Brother Rubio was on Fox News this morning saying, you know, you got the mental health thing and there's a combination of different factors. You know, it's hard. You got to look at it in its totality. Why not screen for depression? They know in the clinical community it's easy to screen, and it's a really strong preventative measure. Why not just do that? Why not start the conversation there?
There was a mental health bill out there for 3 years that Republicans embraced as the answer, but they never actually would move it and pass it. And the reason
Trump got rid of one of the regulations he got rid of, Jolly, was the Obama regulation about making it a little additional screening, a little harder for people with diagnosed mental illness to get a weapon. They got rid of the regulation.
And look, at some point you have to make political value judgments. There has been this question that if you allow doctors to report, does that reduce the likelihood people will seek care? At this point, I think that's a value judgment we have to say, let's just take that risk. But let's go back to the NRA for a minute, because this is the reality of politics. They fight a slippery slope every single day, and they do not want to see an inch of ground given. That's why you didn't see the bump stock vote, because there was no way that Paul Ryan and Republicans were going to have a vote because the NRA didn't want it. And that's their advocacy position. Here's what's happening in Congress, and every Republican, every Democrat has to face this question when you're elected. A lot of people are elected for the first time based on a certain ideology, a rigid ideology. The day you get elected, you hold the public trust, everybody's public trust, not your party's public trust. And the question is, are you only advancing your ideology, or are you trying to solve problems that are real for American families, real for these families in Florida today, real for people in Colorado, in Las Vegas, in Columbine, in Sandy Hook, real for people at Pulse? Because the reality is Republicans are not addressing the real issues. I would also say Democrats often play politics with this as well. They may be right on the gun control issue, but they had an opportunity after Pulse to reach a compromise. They were part of the hands that killed it. I've got the scars on my back to prove that.
Why did they kill it? What was the Democrat problem?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. There are photos of me on the House floor during the sit-in, middle of the night. We reached a deal. I said to the Democrats, I can get 30 Republicans if you can bring your caucus a compromise bill with due process. We went to bed at 3 in the morning. We had the votes, I believe. The next morning, a Democratic colleague said to me, his leadership said, nobody worked with Jolly. We're spending $2 million to beat him in November. We're not going to let him lead on this compromise bill. So in that case, there was a compromise there. Susan Collins had one as well, and it got killed in the Senate.
Party over people. That's BS, Jolly.
That's right.
And if that's true, I'll check it just to make sure before we jump on it too hard. I'm not saying you're a liar, but I got to check things. That's the job. I appreciate you being on, Dave Jolly. Thank you for your perspective, especially as a Republican and one who loves their party. Appreciate it. And once again, I don't know what you're afraid of. Governor Scott, we know that you're a fighter. We know that you believe passionately. Senator Rubio, same thing. Senator Cruz, it's your hallmark. You're the great debater. Why won't you answer the questions that need to be answered? Why won't you discuss how we stop the school shootings? It's a simple question. People should insist you answer it. Allison, back to you, please, in Parkland, Florida, where everybody's